What's up, guys? It's Nico DiCaprio here, and I am going to try and show you how to utilize Adobe Illustrator for making some schematics. So, as you can see here, we have 4 different examples that I made that we're going to try and go through within hopefully 45 minutes to an hour. And hopefully you'll learn a lot of tips and tricks. And just a warning, I am not an expert in Adobe Illustrator. I've picked up a bunch of things along the way, even while making these type of schematics. And so I'm hoping that this is going to be beneficial to all you guys. So I know you were all instructed to kind of get used to the GUI or just the graphic user interface of this program, but I'm just going to go over it like super fast just to give you an idea. And so if you see here on your right or your left, you have a bunch of different tools that you can pick from. This is usually pops up right away. Up here, you have a lot of different styling options for whenever you're drawing different types of shapes. You have your general kind of, I guess, window bar or whatever they call it. And then over here, you can kind of pick and grab different types of functions or different windows or tools. And then I'll move this down here because I'll never use this space. But then over here, you have kind of property section, which is properties for whatever type of object you're looking at. So like if I click on something like this, all of the information about that object is there. And then we have the layers, and I can't stress this enough. So I never used to usually use this before, but for this tutorial, I really made sure to organize everything a lot better. And it really helps with being able to, like, turn off things, turn on things, be able to manipulate some objects all at once. And then there's these libraries, which I personally don't use too much, but there's a lot of different options out there from, I think it's called Adobe Stock, that you can kind of bring into the program. And so, so we have 4 different objects here. Obviously, hopefully I did a good enough job that you guys can already recognize what these type of schematics are. We have a stem cell, or for our case, an HMSC, a 2D adepicite that looks like somewhat 3D, and then we have a actual 3D rendered adepicite, and then we have a 2D hydrogel with some fibers and adepicites within it, and tried to make this also look a little bit 3D. And I'm going to try and mimic this as much as possible while walking through it, but this is an art. This is the fun part, at least for me, for doing research. So I'm going to try and do the best I can to mimic everything, but I think you'll just seeing how I try and do it is more of the important thing. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the 3D adepicite, because this is the easiest one to do, but it's also, in my opinion and your computer's opinion, the worst one to use. Whenever you do 3D rendering, it takes up a lot of memory and processing power. So say you copy this 4 or 5 times, and by the end of it, if you don't have a very strong computer, the Adobe Illustrator will just crash, and it won't save, and sometimes the autosave doesn't even kick in. So let's start here. So I'm going to first start with the membrane. So I'll go to the layers here. You see you have the lipid, nucleus, and the membrane. So let's go over here to our shapes tool, and we have an ellipse. And so what you can do is just click on it and drag like this. If you want a perfect sphere or a perfect circle, you can go ahead and press the shift key. And what it automatically does is it will scale it with it. But, obviously I want it to look 3D or more of an ellipsoid. So I'm going to do it like this. And for the purpose of this, I want the fill to be a certain color. So here it's purple. So we can pick, I don't know, purple like that. It's not the exact same, but it's okay. And then also you'll see later with this 3D rendering that the stroke also comes into play, and the fill's actually inside of the 3D sphere or membrane that you did make. And so real quick, I'll go to properties and see here you have pretty much transparency. I'm not going to pronounce opacity because I probably said it wrong, but you can see as you go through, it starts to lighten up. And if you have any type of objects that are behind it, you start to kind of see it. And then you have this FX right here, stands for effects. And to get this 3D rendering, you can go to 3D and go to revolve. But before I do that, I just want to show that there are totally tons of different options to add effects to your objects to make it look more 3D, cropping, anything you can really think of. And then as well as it has Photoshop effects in it as well. And so at first, you really actually want a hemisphere when you do this rotation, because when the revolve function, what it does is that it picks either an anchor point, basically. So either like the left side or the right side, and it's basically going to revolve it around that point. So if you see, I'm going to do it now, and it's going to turn into a donut pretty much. See, as you can see here, and then you can kind of rotate whichever way you really want to do. And I'll get back into these functions once we actually do it the right way. And so to be able to kind of do that, what we want to do is click on this little guy right here, and we're going to make it about 90 or 89, doesn't matter. It's going to revolve, and it's going to end up looking kind of exactly like this sphere. All right, and so let's go back to the 3D revolve, and now you see, okay, oh wait, it's kind of making this little cylinder tube thing. We can change that. So if you see here, you have an offset and also from left edge. So this is the thing I was talking about earlier, where it chooses a single axis point to revolve around. So here you can see that it's revolving around this point right here, but if we click and go to the right edge, it now revolved around that straight part of the hemisphere. And you can change it, revolve it, whichever way you want. For spheres, it doesn't matter too much, but if you have blocks, you can obviously see a much bigger difference. And then you have a bunch of different options like plastic shading, diffuse shading, like no shading, wireframe. But for the purpose, I always like using diffuse shading or plastic shading, just because it kind of gives that, appearance that a light is hitting it. But you can always go to more options right here and change where the light is hitting it, the intensity of the actual light itself, the ambient light around it, as well as the shading color. So, you can pick some weird custom where it turns it orange, but for most purposes, you want it black because this is kind of more realistic. And so I'm just going to click OK. And now we have our sphere, and you can see here in one of these layers. So usually whatever object you or whatever layer you're in currently and you start drawing an object, it's going to appear. So I'm just going to go here and try and find it. So if you just click, what you can do is go through all the different types of layers until you finally find it. And what will happen is that you'll be able to actually see where it is. So let me find it real quick, where it is. It should not have a name because I didn't name it. Where are you? But I guess while I try and find, I can show you this. So you can click and on the layers, and you can see that as I click different function or this little button, it's kind of the target, and it appears where where it is located on the actual screen. But where are you? It's not there. Must be in the 3D type of site. So this is odd. All right, I have all of them open. Is it this Lipid? Okay, so it must be, okay, yes, here it is. See how, go here, turn off. Okay, so the purpose, this is why you need layers. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna click out of this, and I'll move this. You see down here, you can create a new layer, but you can also, if say I wanted to add a different layer within a layer already, you can say click here, and then you can also add a new sub layer. And this is something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later as we build it. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to create a new layer, drag it, drag it away from all. Oh, see, okay, I created it in its sub layer. It's not what you want to do because I did not click out. Start here, and then see, it's not within any of these drop-down boxes. It's its own layer. For the purpose of this, I'm going to rename it 3D sphere, or I guess deposit walkthrough. So now we have a layer, and what you can do is click here, and then I'm going to actually drag it within here. And then now you have an ellipse. We can call this membrane. Awesome. Okay, so next up, now we're going to draw, the nucleus and the lipid droplet inside of it. So we're basically going to do almost the same exact thing, just a little bit smaller. So we're going to draw this here, an ellipse. And again, we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to make it a hemisphere. Let's make it a different color. So this one was a green, just because that's kind of what color we always use for confocal. And then I'm going to go and use the revolve function again. Again, it always starts with the left edge, go to the right edge, and then here we go. And so you can kind of do two options. You can either just overlay it on top, and sometimes the program will do this where you see it kind of glitched out. And that's why you don't really want to use these 3D rendering stuff. But you can either have it go right in front of it, or you can do stuff like arrange it behind it. So if you right click on the object and say send it back, now you can't see it at all, but this is where kind of the transparency setting kicks in. So if you click on the membrane and go say, I don't know, like 40, now you can see it, but I don't know, I don't think it really looks the best. So I always just try and keep it in front. So I'll send the membrane to the back. And now we're going to do the same exact thing with the nucleus. So we'll go make it a hemisphere again. And we want it to be a dark blue. And then again, same thing, 3D, revolve, does the same exact thing, right? And then there we go. So I made it a little bit bigger, but you can always change this by doing the selection tool. There's this other direct selection tool, which brings up anchor points. I'll talk about this more in the 2D version of these images because it's a lot more useful than 3D. But then we can just drag this here, and then it's a little bit overlapping. Here we go. And then let's just shrink it a little bit. Oh, I rotated it. Shrink it. There we go. I'll bring it here. Cool. And so say, you know, all right, now I have all these layers, 3D depth, these are all ellipses, say nucleus, um, lipid, these out of the way so it's easier to see. All right, cool. Yeah, so see how each part has an individual object. You can kind of group them together. This is very similar to PowerPoint, where if you just, you know, drag and put a box around it, you can actually go to object and group them all together. But this does change the layer pathway now, and it kind of groups it together. And you know, everything now with grouping, as you probably are familiar with PowerPoint, you can drag it all around and they all kind of come together. But I usually wait to group things until the very, very end, just because for some reason it makes it more tricky to deal with, especially with the layers, I realized, because it groups it here and then it gets kind of confusing and I kind of lose track of where everything is. So for the purpose of that, I'm just gonna undo that. So Control Z a bunch of times because I moved it everywhere. And now it has these individual pieces again. And so this is really important. The great thing about Illustrator is that the undo and redo has a bunch of, you're allowed to redo and undo a bunch of times, unlike say Microsoft Word where it only gives you kind of like one or two. And there's no history of what you did like say SolidWorks. So this is why the layers is very, very important. Is because you can see where everything is and then say, okay, I want to click on the ellipse here and highlight it. And then I can go to my properties. And then now I know, oh, okay, I use the effects 3D revolve, you know, I have this certain color. And then, you know, you can also, you know, transform it X, Y, width and height, just in case you want very specific dimensions. But okay, so we're done with this 3D deposit. So I'm gonna actually just hide it. So you see these little eyes here, you can just click it off and it just disappears. And now I'm gonna go into probably the second easiest one, and this is the 2D deposit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure I do this right this time. I'm gonna click away from here, and this will create a new layer, and this is going to be 2D deposit walk through. All right, cool. So now we're in this layer. I'm going to make sure that it's highlighted when I add these new shapes. So we're going to go back to the ellipse tool and we're actually use it as an ellipse. So say, I don't know, this looks about good. And now you can see, you know, it's under that proper layers. So I'm going to go back to properties because obviously it does not look exactly the same. So I have a gray here. So I am pretty sure I remembered I used either probably this one. Yeah. But there's another, usually there's an eyedropper. If you usually want to create one, let me see. Okay, here it is. So here's a bunch of swatches, but if you want to go to the color mixer, you know, I can go and be like, this is my color. So now it went and it changed it to that exact color. But as you can see, there's a little bit of white underneath it, and that's because I used a gradient. But before I get there, you see how there's this black line kind of outlining it for the boundary, and there's also this little, it looks like a haze around it, and that's called an outer glow. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to make the boundary first. So stroke is kind of the boundary. It's used for lines. It's the boundaries of shapes. And so here we made it black. but we also want it to be a little bit thicker. So it looks like around 2 is what I use. But you know what? I can also go and just click on the properties here and see, no, I used 1.192, whatever. So for the purpose of just making it easier for you guys, I'll do 2 points. And now I'm gonna try and get this little haze. So I'll click here to look what I did. And you see it's outer glow. And then let me just look at what I use. So the blur is around 7, points. The opacity or the transparency is 65, and then there's this mode. I'll get into it as I show you how to even get to the outer glow. So I'll click back here. There's nothing here now. So we'll go to FX, stylize, outer glow. And you see this nice thing appears. And actually, it already kind of mimicked exactly what it was over here. But let me just show you. As you go down, it gets closer to it. And as it gets far away, it blurs away from your object. And then you can also make it really, really strong. So black, I honestly kind of even like that better. So I'm just going to keep it. And so, yeah, that's how you get this outer glow. I use the outer glow a lot. I think it makes it kind of adds some 3D dimension to a 2D object without having to actually use like the 3D rendering functions. Then as you can see here, there is still some white, and I kind of made it look more 3D in this way. So what I actually did is that I used a gradient. So you can click here to create a gradient. It's also up here. What you really want to do is click it once, and you can see that it just kind of appears wherever you click, and it creates this bar. And this is really similar to other gradient tools, such like PowerPoint. It's just a little bit different setup. So you can kind of control the intensity of one color over the other. So as you bring it to the left, it's more intensified with the gray instead of the white. But for the purpose of this, let's just move it back. But you can also change the gradient itself. So here, you can make it only be a certain section of this object. You can also, let's see, rotate it. And then as well as these black boxes kind of make it go in and out. So looks like what I did here was, and you see how you move it also closer, it gets brighter. So the purpose of this, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. But again, I still want that gray, nice gray on the end. So we'll do the best we can. I think the point of Illustrator is that it's a lot of playing around with until it looks really pretty. And especially if you're a perfectionist, it might take some time. But there's different types of gradients. As you can see, there's a linear gradient where it kind of goes from left to right. There's radial gradients, which is really good for more circular or elliptical objects where it goes from a point and then outward. And then there's this other function, which I don't really use too much about, and I don't really know. It's multicolor, so you can kind of blend a lot of colors together. But for this point, we'll never use it. And another thing is you don't have to like just point and click and stuff like that. You can actually drag and say, I went over here. So now it's coming from this other object. But as you can tell, it's more in the middle here. So I'm gonna drag it out like that. And that looks about good for me, at least for this. All right, cool. So we have the membrane done. And now we'll make the Let's go for the nucleus next. Same thing, it's just a ellipsoid, but see, it's gonna have the same type of properties. Still under the same type of layer because I didn't really go to other layers. But let me just make this clear for everybody, and then nucleus. Okay, so I'll go back to properties because I want to change it because it looks exactly like our membrane. So here, we want it to be dark blue again. And then for this one, I either didn't add a stroke or it's very tiny, so let me see. So it's about 1. So go here, 1, go down, and it's not nearly as visible. But you can still see here that I have this little white tint to it. And you know, we can use that gradient function if you want. But for spherical objects, there's this really cool thing. It's not just spherical objects, but it's all different shapes in any object you make, but I think it looks the best for spherical objects, is instead of doing an outer glow, we can do an inner glow. And so let's preview this. And so you have 2 options here, different from the outer glow, is that you can do it from the edges or from the center. And obviously, it looks like it's the center is the one that I used here. And the same thing as blur, you can blur it away in the way you want. So here, I don't know, I'll use about 8 to pass the you know, transparency. And then I didn't really explain this mode. I've tried to look into this a billion times, and it apparently does different functions, but for our purposes, it like changes it somewhat or has overlay. I've really never seen a difference, so I just always use screen or normal. If you want to really look into it more, you can, but I meant for what we're using it for, I think screen would be fine. So let's click away from here. So now we have the nucleus. And we're going to pretty much do the same exact thing with the lipid droplet. As you can see, it's kind of radial. I meant it has this like inner glow. So let's go here and make it kind of look pretty big because, as you know, unilocular lipid droplets take up most of the cell body. We'll go back to here, still in our layer, again, because I didn't go to any other layers, and then let's name this lipid. Okay, let's change the color. So we want it to be filled green. Stroke, looks like it was a little bit, I don't know, darker, so let's do 2. That's fine. Yeah, actually, no, 1. That's better. And then we're going to do the same exact thing. So we're going to go to, again, effects and stylize, inner glow. And now pick from the center again because the edge is this function. So center, blur it down. And you can still see that's pretty, it's pretty bright, unlike this. So let's just change the opacity. And it's not exactly the same. It's probably because I use a different fill color here. So you can see here it's a little bit darker. I'll use that one. So we can change it if we want. There's that one. Yeah, and so it looks pretty similar. All right. And so, yeah, this is pretty much how I made this 2D adipocyte. And, you know, at the end, you can object group. This allows you to, like, you know, move the whole thing, stuff like that. You know, you can Control C and Control P and paste it everywhere. But I'm just going to delete this. And again, for the purpose of this, I'm actually, instead of I guess, turning the visibility of this off, I'm actually going to shrink it because I'm going to use it as one of these guys. So this is probably harder than this one to make, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyways. So before I do it, let's zoom in here. So you can zoom with by just pressing Control and then plus, and then to zoom out, Control minus. But if you forget that, you can always go to, I think, View, yes, View, and then zoom in, zoom out. I don't know why it says, oh, Control plus plus just means you want to hit Control and plus at the same time. But you can kind of see here, it's even harder to see, but we have some fibers, adipocytes, and then it's within a hydrogel. But I meant even down to these fibers has, these outer glow and these different functions that really make it stand out more as a three-dimensional object, even though it's just 2D. So I'm going to do exactly what I did for these other ones. I'm going to click away. I'm going to do a new layer, and I'm going to name this, I don't know, hydrogel with cells walk through. Okay, so now we're in this. So you actually can't make this hydrogel shape by itself. You might be able to by playing around with say like just the pool functions and stuff like that. But I think it gets harder, and I'll go more into it with this because you'll just see. So we're gonna actually make this hydrogel with two different objects. So we're gonna go to the ellipsoid, and we're gonna make a flat guy right here. And for purposes of this, oh, and see, I clicked on the 3D sphere and I went to a different layer. So I'm gonna grab this and go to our 3 hydrogel with cells. Oops, grabbed the wrong one. This one. God, that doesn't have anything in its picture. There we go. Okay. Now I'm never going to touch any of these yet, so we don't have that problem. All right, so I'll go back to properties. You can see that I'm going to make it a certain color. Don't remember what color it was, so I'm going to use this eyedrop function if I can. I don't really know. We can. There's a way to get the eyedrop so it adds in here. It does it with, for some reason, gradients. It's just right here. There's probably another way to do it, but that's just an easy Google search. Oh, you could just do it right here. There it is. So let's make it that color. And you can see it's a gradient, so it doesn't look the same right now for, it doesn't look the same as the hydrogel yet. But I don't know, for the purposes of this right now, I'll just make it this pink. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so now, yeah, okay, great. We have this flat layer here. But we also want this more, I guess, spherical part. So what we're gonna do is grab the ellipsoid tool again, and we're gonna drag it. So from basically this intersect. So what you can do is line up a lot of different objects. It kind of automatically appears with these pink lines here. But I want it to be more of a sphere. So I'm going to press Shift. We're going to go from this one intersect to the other intersect. So it kind of looks like this. But obviously we don't need this whole thing here. So what I'm going to do is cut it in half. So what we're gonna do first is get a line and just intersect it. And then we can go up here to window. And so I didn't go over this, but you can, this is where you find all of the, I guess, tools or functions you can use for all the objects if they're not already on the screen. So for this one, Pathfinder is not on here yet, and we're going to be using this one. So we're going to click it, and it appears. But you can also, drag it over here if you want. But for this purpose, I kind of just want it here. This one, yes. Okay, so we're going to go and we're going to drag both of these, and then you can do these different functions: divide, trim, merge, unite, minus. But for this one, we're going to divide it. So now it divided it, and it's pretty much there's going to be an upper one and a lower one, but it's still grouped right now. So what you have to do is go to Object and ungroup it. And now what we can, okay, well actually, let me go back first. If I try to grab it without ungrouping it, see how it just goes together? But if I do and I ungroup it and I click away, now I can move each one. And I don't want this bottom one, so I'm just going to delete it. And so now what I'm going to do is bring it close to here, but you still see how you have this line, like it doesn't look exactly the same here. There's this line here. And so what we can do is, okay, I resume the recording. I didn't want to waste your time. I just want to remember how to do it. Okay, so what we can do here now to get rid of this line and kind of unite both of these like you see here is we can just get our selection tool and drag, and we're going to use the Pathfinder again, and you can actually unite it. And so now it got rid of this that black line, as well as this you can't really see it, but also like this other part of the hemisphere. So I'm going to go back and unite them, and now they're one object for as far as we're concerned, and we're not going to use this Pathfinder too much anymore right now. Okay. So before I get to how to get this kind of like 3D effect, I'm going to add this little, it's called a drop shadow. So what we can do is we're going to go here, make sure we actually click on it. I'm going to name it now as just hydrogel. We're going to go back to properties and effects, stylize, and there's a drop shadow. And you can see here, it's on the right side. You have a bunch of different options for this. You can multiply it, normal, overlay, soft, but I'll multiply it. And then so you can also change, how, transparent it is or how intense it really is, the blur, the X and Y offset. And as you see, it's on the right side, kind of looking like the light is hitting from, this angle almost. But I don't know why. I just kind of like it hitting from this angle. So I'm gonna move it over there by just clicking the X offset, go down a little bit, and then I'm gonna make the blur a little bit inward, kind of like how it is here. It's at probably like a 1, and the Y offset's a little bit higher, and then we'll just bring this here. But you see, it's really, really dark compared to this one, and that's where the opacity comes in handy. So I'm gonna honestly, let's try 50. Okay, that didn't work. It still looks pretty dark. So I'll show you how to go back and change it. You literally just click on it, see where that effect is, click on it, you edit the effects, and I'm gonna just keep going down until, all right, that looks about right, 20%. Click it, awesome. All right, now, all right, cool. We have the drop shadow, but the light's hitting it from up here to so this way, so up here, down there, and we have the shadow, but as we all know, there's probably going to be a little light spot here, kind of like how there is there. And that's where the gradient tool comes in handy. And so I'm going to first just click here, and it kind of does this weird thing, but I'm just going to go here like this. And you can see makes this little bright light, and we can change it again. And then let's see if we can make this color a little brighter. Okay. So the one thing about the drop shadow is that it changes the color. So of like the actual color. So you can see here, I picked purple and it's kind of blue, and that's because of the drop shadow function. And so what you can do with that is, let's go to just eyedropper and pick this. Oh no. Oh, okay. Whoops, I'm sorry. Let's go backwards. I want to click on this color. So we'll go here. This color here, I want to be that color. And there we go. We kind of have the exact same color. But if you don't want the color to be affected as much by that drop shadow, say like this isn't here obviously, and if you're going to make a new figure, what you can do is just go to that drop shadow and really bring down the opacity. I just know you guys are going to make fun of me for not pronouncing this word right, but that's okay. Okay, this looks good enough. All right, so let's start adding our adepicites in. Obviously, this is a little bit too big and we need more of them, so let's bring them down. And let's shrink it. So, you can shrink it all different types of ways, but if you want to do it in a way that scales it properly, hit shift while doing it, and you see how I move it everywhere and I can't really kind of bend it or smush it, so it kind of does it exactly how Microsoft would. So let's make them tiny like this. Now, it's not as tiny, but I kind of want you to see the features that I'm going to do on both these adepicites. So, okay, let's click here. Let's make a few. It's going to appear in the same place. So I had about 4 or 5. So I'll only do 4 because they're a little bit bigger. But obviously, you don't want them to be the same direction, and as well, you don't want it to be behind your hydrogel. So you can either do one thing. You can make the hydrogel be in the back, or you can just bring the deposite to the front. I mean, this is just like PowerPoint. So you right-click, arrange, bring to front, and it's still not doing it. It might be in a different layer. Yeah, so usually when you still do the front to back, or you arrange it differently and it still doesn't work like that, so like I did it, bring it to front, still didn't do it, it's because it's not in the right layer. And let's see where it is. So 2D adepicites probably. Yep, here they all are. So 2D adepicites when it's supposed to be in the hydrogel with cells section. So move them all here under that. And see how they're all groups still, because I grouped them. That might become a problem later, but we can fix that when it comes. Okay. Let's go back to properties, and now still behind, arrange, bring to front. Voila, there it is. And you can also see the glow now, because it has a different background. It's a little bit white, but that's okay. We can change this. You can see the effects aren't here anymore because it's grouped. And see, that's the problem that I was going to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ungroup it. And that way I can only click on the membrane. We still have this outer glow. preview it here. What we could do is we can start changing the color. So let's make it white. See, really didn't do anything. Whoops. Real quick, let me see what I did for this one. All right, I'm back. I'm sorry again. I had to figure out how I overcame this issue of that I ran into when I was doing it the first time, where you see how our outer glow is black, but then the second we bring it in, oops. All right, let's try this again. The second you bring it in, bring it on top, bring forward. It's white now. Why is it like that? And this is where it actually, one of the functions that I said I didn't really understand kind of comes in handy. So let's go back to layers and let's pick this adepicite. We'll go to the membrane and we'll go to properties and we'll go to outer glow. And remember this mode thing where I said I don't really know what it does? Well, we can do something like multiply and it makes it black. You can do overlay. So, there's still a lot that, I don't even know, but as you can tell, you don't need a lot to make simplistic schematics that still look kind of good. You don't want to overcomplicate it or else it kind of draws away from your overall message. So instead of trying to fix all these, I'm just going to delete all of these ones and then just copy the ones I already have done. And maybe I'll have one more. Okay. It doesn't look as good, but that's okay. All right, but see, they're all in the same direction. You really don't want that. So what you can do, let's like rotate some of them. Let's back up so we can see how it looks. Okay, so there's one. So one facing like say upward, one's left. Let's look on this one. See if we can kind of make it, down this way a little bit. And then this way. Okay. But so here's the problem though. We have this idea that the light's hitting this way, but now all of the shadings that we previously did for this one is kind of, it doesn't align and it's not artistically favorable. So let's zoom in and fix these real quick. And so we're not going to be using the inner glow. We're going to be using that gradient stuff. So the gradient function. So let's go and start with all these adepicites. So we'll click here and you see it lit up here. So I know it's that one. So let's close the rest so we're not confused. Okay, let's start with the lipid. Let's click on the lipid, go back to properties. We're going to delete this inner glow because we don't really want it anymore because it doesn't give the impression we want. So how do we get the impression we want? Gradient tool, again, handy dandy tool. And we're going to click it. And now that we clicked it, we're going to drag it. But you see, kind of click, use the gray. So we can go and change it back to the color it was. And now we have a lipid that looks like it's coming from the left. Looks like the light is hitting it from the left. And so it's okay, looks good. We can do the same thing with the nuclei here. I think over here I left it as just kind of interior. I meant with the inner glow, and it doesn't seem to look horribly bad, but you can do the same thing with that. And then as well as the membrane if you choose to. But I think the membrane, it still looks perfectly fine like that. But sadly, we can't just copy and paste it because each dip site is coming from a different angle. So I will go to the next one and keep trying to do this as fast as we can because it's kind of repetitive. Trouble here. Let's go back to properties, delete the inner glow, get this back. You have to initially first click it, and that allows you to drag it. All right, that's good enough. Next one is coming from here because of this. Flip it again, properties, get rid of that. Gradient. And let's get the last one. Okay, there's the last lipid droplet. Again, get rid of that inner glow. Go to it's called the gradient, and we'll do the same exact thing. And you can play around with this and be very particular about it, like I do. But for the purpose of this, it would take way too long. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add in these fibers. And so I'm fortunate enough that I have a pen that I usually use to kind of make the fibers because it's kind of more fluent for me. So if you do have a pen, you can go and click up here, and there's different ways that Illustrator is performed, visualized. So these are different, I guess, graphic user interface layouts. So for, say, if you have a pen, it's more in tune to having a pen, but not everyone has one. So I'm gonna go and just go back to my essentials and do it the hard way, or the way, I don't know. Okay, so we can go to paint right here. I usually use the paint tool brush. And okay, this needs to get out of here. Paint tool brush. And with a paint, you have, a certain stroke, the color. I want to make it, I don't really want it to fill. I just want it to have a stroke because it's a line. I don't want it to be filled in. But the most important thing is that you have the brush definition. And if you don't want it to have a certain type of stylistic texture, like you can make it look like, it's, a charcoal, it bleeds off. But I'm just gonna use basic because for right now, that's what I'm going to use. And I didn't change it for some reason, basic. It's gonna work. No. Darn you. Okay. Well, the paint button usually works for me, but you can also use, where is it? There's a pencil tool, which is a lot better. I do not know why it keeps bringing the green into it like I have a fill. All right, 1 second. I'm gonna pause again. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. So yeah, the thing about Illustrator, it's not perfect too. There's a lot of glitches. For instance, like I was going to this paint tool, using it, trying to change it to just basic, And then you click away, and then say you click on it again, and it goes back to the calligraphy. And it was also doing this, down here. It's also doing this weird thing where, I don't know, it said I had this green fill in when I didn't. It had this little marking, but for the purpose of this, you can use the pen tool. I meant the paintbrush tool. I think it's a little bit more helpful when you have an actual pen, but for this purpose, we'll use a pencil. So calligraphy, you can use different types of brushes like 5-point round, 15-point, it's just the size. If you want to create a new one, go to new brush and I don't know, bristle brush or calligraphy brush. All right, and then you can do kind of like the angle, the roundness, the size. For this part, I'm just gonna do one because I like to see the skinniest lines and then kind of use the stroke to make them larger. So after you're done here, let's draw some fibers. Okay, so we're gonna zoom in a little bit here. And you can see, and I noticed this too, as with the multiply, it looks like it's a little bit more pixelated than it was with the other one. And I think I'm gonna have to pause it again once I'm done with this whole video and try and figure it out and get back to you on it. But all right, let's just start drawing some lines. And so you don't have to be perfect with it because it does add a certain amount of anchor points. An anchor point is each one of these little dots that you can manipulate, but if it's not an anchor point, this part of the line will follow the manipulation of an anchor point, either say here or here whenever you move it. So by example, if you click here, I can say, okay, click on the anchor point and move it like that. But I don't want to do that because it looks like a fiber. So let's go back to the pencil tool. We'll make some more. I usually like to cross them. Make it look kind of as realistic as you can, I guess. Make a bunch. And some look, see if you use all black, it looks like they're kind of connected. So sometimes what you can do is, arrange it so one's in the back, one's in the front, but you really can't tell with black. It's usually with different colors. But you see how, I'll zoom back out and go to the other one. See how this looks a little bit, it's the same one. See how it looks more rounded towards the ends, as well as there's this little glow here around it. So we're gonna do the same exact thing. I'm trying to make it, oh man, these fibers really don't look good. But this is not the time to be a perfectionist. I'm trying to show you guys how to use these functions appropriately. Okay, so what you can do to get rid of this this boxy ends is that you can click on it. And if you go to stroke, you can also go to stroke up here. I usually go up here. And you can cap them, the caps or the ends. So I'm going to do round end. And you can see now the fiber has rounded edges instead of square. And you can do this with, corners, as well as, getting arrowheads for one size or the other, uniform, if you want it to be larger in the middle and then pointier at the end or something like that. I think uniform looks good enough for what we try and do, but you can always get stylistic with it. Go and do all these real quickly. All right, cool. So now they have all rounded edges, but they still don't have that outer glow. So we're gonna go and try and do it again, outer glow. See, it's white, and we want it to blur. Yeah, we want it to look like this. Hopefully it doesn't pixelize. Still trying to figure out why it does that. Maybe it's just that setting, but we'll start doing it to all of them. So outer glow again, multiply, yes. Oh wait, there we go. And you see it kind of does make it look more 3D. So we'll do it again. And the last one. All right, cool. And I'm just gonna try and see what is wrong with this real quick. And if I can't figure it out within a second, I'll just move on. I'm hoping it's just a simple turn it off and on type thing. Yeah, seems like it was just a little glitch. All right, well, since I figured it out, I will go back and kind of fix them. So I hope you guys are doing good with this COVID-19 stuff. I know as an extrovert, it has been a little bit harder for me, but you know, I'm healthy and that's good. And I hope all you guys are healthy. I'm just trying to make conversation so I do not bore you guys as I try and fix this stuff. But I actually do care, so I'm not trying to bore you. I actually do hope you guys are okay. Okay, cool. So we're done with this one. Sorry, it took a little bit longer. And as you can tell, you know, it does not look exactly like this one. And I personally think it's really hard to mimic new or very similar images. It can be done, takes probably a little bit longer, but you want to make it, you know, unique to your own. And so we won't need this one anymore, so I'm going to group it together. Notice I didn't really worry about naming them because I kind of copied and pasted like existing objects that I made, so they kind of already have the same name. But oh, actually, I was looking, I think at the wrong one. Yeah, though it's within a completely different layer. So that is a problem. So let's try and create a new layer, bring the group with them. Awesome. I already created one. Obviously this doesn't have anything in it, neither does this one. So let's just delete them. I don't know what happened to them. But we'll get rid of it. And let's go to the HMSC now. And this is going to be the last one. And this is where you're going to learn how to kind of manipulate objects a little bit better. So I'm going to call this HMSC. If I spell anything wrong, I apologize. I am not the best speller. All right, so we'll start again by making the membrane. This one, I'm gonna try and be very, very careful with the layering so you can see exactly how you want to use it. So, you know, I have this base one, I call it HMSC the rock food, but I want to make a membrane now. So I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a sublayer, and then this is gonna be our membrane. And then, okay, we're gonna start with an oval because that's exactly how I started. You can see here it already kind of gave it its identical shape, but I'll show you how you guys do that. But you can see here there are anchor points that you can kind of use to manipulate it, either by pulling or pushing, or by using these handles to kind of swirl it, making it less or more intense. But there's not enough of them here to kind of make these little indent or these little spikes. So what you can do to add more anchor points is go to this tool right here. It's the pen tool. If you hold it down with your left button, you can see there's add, anchor point tool, or delete. So I'm gonna add them here. So we can do is start adding them all over the place because we want to make these very sharp lines and we don't want them to manipulate the parts of the line that do not have the anchor points as much. And you can tell when you have enough by just seeing how many of these white little boxes appear around your or ellipsoid. And you can see, like, there's not a certain amount of number that you really need. All right, this should be enough. So what I'm going to do now is you want to use the direct selection tool when you're using trying to manipulate anchor points. If you use the selection tool, it's using the whole object. But if you go here to the selection tool, you can pick each one individually. So what I'm going to do is start grabbing and pulling all these out. But you see how it's kind of not as pointy. So what you can do is play with these handles to try and make them as pointy as possible. And so they get pointier as you have more anchor points. So you see how there's not too many, I guess it appears that there's not too many anchor points around here. So what I can do is add some more everywhere to ensure that the lines, again, that don't have those anchor points don't get manipulated too much. And there might be other ways around this, but this is how I usually do it. It's a little tedious, but I'm sure there might be other ways. I think there's a certain function where you can actually say how many anchor points you want around your whole object, but we'll do this way. So here it's not manipulating too much. And we get this nice little, I guess, self-spreading Philopodia, whatever you would like to call it. And we can do this all over now. Some here. I'm just going to keep doing this all over until it's all the way around. And then, you can always just do, make half of it, mirror it if you like to. But I think it makes it a little bit better when you kind of do each one by hand. So it has different characteristics to each one. Okay. Almost there. There you go. And I'm sure you can find one of these types of objects maybe in an Adobe stock or Adobe stock object or something like that. But then you have to credit whoever made that. And it's not as fun to give credit for something if it's, your paper. And you have to give credit for something like, just a simple shape. Okay. So, this looks good enough for me. I mean, there's this weird little patch that I might, add another anchor point to, and then try and make one more. Oops. So now we have it, let's go back here. See, it's a little bit bigger and it's a little bit darker and stuff in terms of the shading. So let's just manipulate it a little bit with the selection tool. And so you can see that there's this outer glow again. So we'll just go to the membrane, click on it. We can add it by going to the effects, stylize, outer glow. And for this one, I definitely blurred it more so it would kind of fill in the crevices, but I didn't want it to be too bright. And since, you know, we're not overlaying it over anything, we can kind of go back to screen. I try and keep it probably around 50, I think. 55, 50, I think is like pretty good for most of it. Okay, cool. So let me show you how to get the gradient again. So it's pretty much the same exact thing as we did before, where you can click on this gradient tool. You can see it's already there, but let's click it and go out like this. Oh no. Zoom in. All right, well, I think it looks pretty similar to it. It might be a little bit brighter, so what we can do is move this guy to the right. And there we go, we kind of have it. You see the border is also a little bit bigger, so what we can go back is use that stroke, and you know, 1 point seems like it's what exactly was what it was at. Let's see. Yeah, 0.8. All right, so so we have the membrane, right? Now I'm in HMSC because I clicked it. Let's go back here. Add a sub layer because I want this to be the nucleus. Sorry, I'm really bad at typing. It's pretty late, but that's okay. Go to oval tool here. We'll make it the same type of size and change the fill to like this, just this dark color, dark blue. The stroke, you know, I don't want it to be that that big. So let's try 0.7, see what happens. Yeah, it looks about good. And then again, you see we have this inner glow here, so we can go and go to stylize, inner glow, do the same thing. Not the edges, we want the center. Blur it more towards the center. Maybe one more, but then just change the intensity of it. Around, I swear, 55 is like the number I find always works and always looks the best for me for some reason. Okay, and now for the tough guys, these little mitochondria, stuff that, you know, I don't really think you need to add, but I think it was a good tool to learn and stuff like that. So I started making these with little tiny ovals. Again, we can zoom in, but they're like more bean shaped, right? So again, what we can do is start adding just these anchor points, and it really does depend where you put the anchor points, because then you manipulate it different ways. So since okay, example, if we didn't have these anchor, oops, we didn't have these anchor points here, I'm just moving it like that, and we don't really have, we want this piece and this piece to kind of be a little bit higher. So it'd be nice to have, it would be nice to have that more bean shape. So what we can do is we can actually, this is the point of the anchors, add them in here. So then when I go down, you can see it's more of a bean shape. It's not the perfect, so we can, you know, play with these handles to try and get it the best we can get it to, and stuff like that. And you know, add it down here, give it more shape. And this looks actually pretty good for the time being. And so I wanted to make the background white, or I wanted to make the, I guess, shell of the mitochondria orange with the white background. So we can use the gradient tool here and here, click the button. So I wanted it to be orange on the outside. So something like this. And then we can play with it. So since it's a bean, we don't really want a spherical or circular gradient. So what we can do is flatten it out like that, and maybe bring it out like that. And so it looks kind of nice like this, I think. And then it's always hard for some reason to find the movement tool for this one. I think it's this. No, it is not. It always just like appears randomly for me. Okay, actually you can just click on the line and that will do it. But don't click somewhere else where the line isn't because it'll do that. All right, we'll go back to the selection tool. All right, cool. So we have the outside. And so for this interior, what you can always do is if something's pretty complicated like this, you can always draw, like put in a picture and then just kind of like trace it. But for this purpose, it doesn't need to be perfect. So we're going to go back and just use the pencil tool. And this is where kind of having like one of those touch pens is a little bit better, but we're going to go and try and make the best of it. And I'm going to purposely not close it because I want to show you how to actually do that. And you can see it's kind of rough around the edges, but you can do this by rounding it more with the little, it looks like bullseyes almost. But for the time being, I think that's good enough. So how do we connect these? So there's two ways. You can go and go to your pathfinders and use Unity like this, but it kind of creates this little I don't know, not complete. It's not smooth. It doesn't follow the anchors and the kind of smooth trend like it does over here. So I'm going to not use that one for here. And what I'm actually going to use is you can go to Object, Path, and then join them together. And it does pretty much the same thing, but at least you can use that little bullseye. And there's more complicated ways. I know I try to look into it to follow the path, but for this purpose, I think it's good enough. So, okay, so we have the black, but we also wanted to fill it. So I think I used dark orange, but it was a gradient. So I'm going to use the gradient tool, click on it. Well, sorry, click away, click on the gradient tool, and then click here. But I'm going to make it dark orange and lighter orange. So it kind of gives it this nice color. So we can, again, move this down, play with it by using the circular black circles and pull it out a little bit farther so it reaches farther. And then of course you can play with how far the fade actually goes. And I think this looks about good. Oops. And I think for the time being, it's not perfect, but I think it gets the point across. And so, okay, so now I want to make 3 of them. So it's always usually good to group it together when you want to move everything, and then I'm going to shrink it, but I don't want to mess it up. So again, you want to do kind of shift and then do it and then move it so it scales it proportionally. And then let's go to layers to see if I'm doing everything right, because I know I always forget about it. Okay, I'm not. So go here, make another sub layer, put the membrane in here, but let's do membranes because, you know, there's a sub layer, but I don't want to make membrane 1, membrane 2, membrane 3. I just want to keep all the membranes together. So I copy it, paste it a couple times. 3 is good enough. And you can see now that, you know, there's 3 membranes. They're all called group, but we can rename them membrane 1, membrane 2, membrane 3 if we want. And then, all right, we can add them in here, turn them certain ways, making sure that they all don't look the same because it's not perfect in the body, I'm sure. And then, yeah, there you go. I mean, it does look a little bit bigger than these ones do, but for the purpose of that, I would like to show you now all the things that hopefully you guys followed and were able to create. Oh no, I must have deleted the other deposit, but you know, you did definitely make it because you used them for this right here. So I hope this tutorial helped. And if you guys have any more questions, or I know some of you might even be a little bit better than me at this, and I would love to hear different pointers. And if, you know, things I did here might have been more tedious and there's, you know, easier functions, I would love to hear from you guys. But with that, I'm going to conclude. So please like and subscribe below. And I hope you guys found this useful. So with that, have a good night, and I will see you guys soon.